People scale back to just one command destroyer, and then using that extra points to protect that command destroyer a lot better.
Balgorn.
Go.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Yintan here and welcome to the Alliance Tournament After Action Report. I'm here with Black Bart Pirate, our resident desk analyst and suit-wearing enthusiast. How are you doing today, Black Bart Pirate?
I'm doing very good. I almost missed a couple trains getting here, so I'm still a little sweaty, but other than that, feeling great.
Getting used to the joys of having actual working public transport.
I wouldn't necessarily say that, but they did hold a train just for me and my wife, which I don't think would happen anywhere where I'm from. So I guess you guys got me on that one.
That's brilliant to hear. And then we have our master of ceremonies, as it were, in Event-T, Bayart J, the man behind the scenes.
Hello.
And we also have our resident stats nerd and also guru of the Laser Talks team specifically, who managed to worm their way to, was it third place in the last Alliance tournament, Alexi?
Yes, third place finish in the prize ships.
Exactly. And today we're going to be going through, the past weekend of the tournament, because obviously a lot of new information has come to bear. We're going to be taking a look at the tools that these teams use, the best teams have used, the specific compositions that they've been able to bring to bear. And we're also going to be taking a look at the matches we enjoy, the matches that each caster in specific enjoyed, and we're also going to be taking a look at the matches we're looking forward to, and also just our predictions in general for the Alliance tournament going forwards, given what we've seen. So let's ramp right into the first section, which is kind of breaking down some of the compositions that we've seen, as obviously this new rule set means that we basically have to start the meta from scratch. Outside of a couple of things that have managed to transfer, like the Tinker and the Octodad, everything else is entirely new. So, Black Bart Pirate, why don't you bring us through this Pandemic Legion composition that they used versus Templar's Calcif? That was a near mirror match, so it's a really interesting composition. But seeing as Pandemic Legion's version of it brought themselves victory, I want you to take us through the better version of that comp.
Sure, so I'm still kind of waiting for it to load completely, but I do know that, oh, there we go, sweet. So the Pandemic Legion versus Templar's Calcif, they both brought weekend of matches. Is pretty much one of the best team comps, which is the 3 battleship armor core. Pandemic Legion brought the Vindicator Balgorn Leshak, where Templar's Calcif went with Balgorn Leshak Armageddon. And other than that, they pretty much brought a mirror match. Pandemic Legion and Templar's Calcif both brought curses. They both brought Vedmax. They both went with logistics frigates. There's a couple little minor variations there, but the thing I really liked about this is it kind of both showed the power of this comp, because after looking through it, the only teams that actually lost using this lost against another team that was using the same sort of setup, and it also showed that the Pandemic Legion one is just like a little bit better. I ended up talking, I think a couple of our streamfleet shows back, I kind of brought this up and was like, hey, this is what I think of as sort of a really solid baseline setup that you can sort of slot different things into, and Pandemic Legion ended up bringing it and showing like really good effect, the power of the massive control and versatility that their setup does. So I purposely, I chose this specific comp and this specific match because it was so close between these two teams. It was one of the big hype-up ones. And it kind of showed that the Pandemic Legion version, it has so much control, but it also has so much damage that they were kind of able to bully Templar's Calcif down through, I think it took about 6 or 7 minutes for it to really be decided, but it was definitely a really solid one. The Vindicator versus the Armageddon is the real big change here. And they're both kind of good. I mean, we've seen some really powerful Newt stuff, which I think we're going to talk about later today. But the power of the Vindicator is it's a 1400 to 2000 DPS battleship that has the webs, and I think that's what actually ended up making Pandemic Legion win. Is I believe they webbed down Athalia and are able to kill it. So it's a ship that's traditionally super hard to kill, and Pandemic Legion just uses the power of their slightly different setup to win here.
Yeah, it was a really, really interesting fight, and one of my personal picks is best match. I think we're actually going to break it down specifically a little later, but the comp itself is really interesting. Something that I want to focus on, however, is the amount of control that it brings, because it's not just in the webs and the newts. You also have those Leshak smart bombs and the cursed tracking disruptors. Can you tell me a little bit about why those are put in, and also the role that those command destroyers fill?
Yeah, you also, and also, like, besides just Leshak, the Vedmak smart bombs as well. So the smart bombs on both of those ships, they allow you, so with the Leshak smart bombs, you have, like, the centered core of the fleet, which is going to be on your battleships. They have the ability to clear rep drones. The smart bombs on the Vedmak are also super important because it gives you this really mobile smart bombing platform. So between both of those, you can sort of both offensively clear smart bombs and defensively clear EC bots. And then, yeah, tracking disruptors on a curse. I mean, the curse is, we kind of saw it last year, and I think this year, again, it's going to be, like, one of the key support ships here, just because it has the ability to completely shut down most of the turret-based ships in the game, and especially, like, Leshak's. If you notice in this specific moment in the match, the Tempest Calcif Leshak is fully tracking disrupted by the curse, so it's probably having a lot of trouble applying any damage right now. And one of the best ways to shut down the Leshak is just to tracking disrupt it to the point where it can't actually hit its optimal range. The way the disintegrators on a Leshak work is that if it can't hit its optimal range, the weapon turns off and the big cycling power that we've talked about, the ramp up turns off. So, yeah. And then they also curse have a ton of newts, and they can field rep drones, and they're just generally really powerful ships.
Yeah, absolutely. So, do you think that we'll see more of this comp going forwards, or are there any hard counters that you can think of, now that it's really been shown off by so many teams? Because obviously it's a very known quantity now, and we all know that once you know something, it's pretty easy to figure out a way to defeat it, right?
Yeah, so I have a big list that's, on my laptop, but we saw this exact comp with, like, maybe one or two switches 4 times. We've seen variations of it where basically it's still Balgorn Leshak, I think 7 or 8 times, so it's obviously not a secret. It didn't lose a single time except to basically itself, so we know it's really good. Counters to it, off the top of my head, like, I know a couple of them that I probably shouldn't completely say, just because I know that this is, obviously if PL's using it, then that means probably NC's using it because they just copy each other, right? Like, that's what the current meme is. So obviously I can't go too crazy with it, but we've seen it. I think the only time I saw it lose was against the super heavy battlecruiser cores, where you bring, like, modern battlecruiser cores are like 4 battlecruisers and then a couple AHACs. So just the
Drake's them, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, Drake should probably do it. Just, like a shield battlecruiser core might actually pull it off. A Tinker's gonna eat shit to it, so don't bring that. But
it's clearly got a vulnerability to ECM there, otherwise
yes.
PL wouldn't have banned out the Blackbird and the Rook. I don't know if some sort of wacky Scorpion Widow kind of
It's interesting that
maybe,
Praxis
I don't know.
ban, actually. We don't get a lot of time to talk about bans in the broadcast, so I'll probably touch on those a little bit when we come to the matches, especially.
Yeah, but yeah, there's definitely an ECM vulnerability to it. I mean, to be fair though, which I think we're going to talk about later, there's like an ECM vulnerability to everything. So, banning out Rooks is kind of one of the biggest, the strongest ECM ships right now in this current meta, and you ban that out, you don't really have to worry about it as much.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for breaking that down. Do you have it? Can you TLDR this comp at all for people who are completely new to the game?
Yeah, 3 battleships and armor and support. That's it.
Awesome. So I'm going to throw this over now to Archie, who's going to talk us through a very, very expensive composition that 2 of the highest tier teams, the teams that we expect to almost certainly place top 4, Hydra and Vidra, used, which is the Amarian core setup. And that's something that's very unique. We haven't seen anything close to it in previous Alliance tournaments. Do you want to talk us through, predominantly because the rules didn't meant that it wasn't beneficial to bring a comp like this. So do you want to break this down for us a little bit, Archie?
Yeah, so Vidra brought, they fought against Velora Accord. They got a bye through the first round, and in the second round they brought a very kind of, it's an interesting setup. It's kind of, it's Leshak, Guardian, Legion, Vanguard, Sacrilege, Curse, Pontifex, Vedmak, Purifier, and Damavik. And in this match, they basically use all. One interesting thing to note about this setup straight away is that they're all Amar sensors. So the Triglavian ships, if you're not aware, they use Amar sensors. So along with all the other Amar ships here, they're going to be very hard to jam out unless you've got all Amar jammers. And I guess they're counting on Valor Accords not knowing this and not bringing all Amar jammers to help them out here. So if Valor Accords, it means they don't have to ban ECM ships and they can ban more other things that they think will be vulnerable to this comp, like the Scorpion and the issue, the Bargis there, the high damage and quite strong missile battleships. The other thing to note about this setup is it's very newt heavy. You've got neutralizer bonuses on the Lashak, you've got a neutralizer Legion here, you've got neutralizer bonuses on the Vanguard, which kind of gets similar bonuses to the Curse, I think. Is it the same bonuses or very similar ones? You've also got a Curse as well, so you've got essentially 2 Curses worth of cruisers with newts there. You've got a ton of neutralizers, you can just flatten the capacitor on the entire enemy team. So it doesn't matter that you haven't got as much DPS as you would with a triple battleship core, because you can just flatten the cap of the enemy team. That prevents them doing E-War, prevents them doing repairs, prevents them shooting if they're capacitor-based guns. So it's a heavy control comp. But with neutralizers, it was interesting because in the past we've seen heavy control comps with damps, with tracking disruptors, jams. We've seen neutralizers play an important part, obviously, with the Balgon meta and Armageddon meta, but this is just full newts. So it's just kind of, try and get near us and you won't have any cap, which is kind of what they go for, and it works magically against Valor Accords here. They can't get close enough to do anything interesting, and Vidra just slowly picking them apart there. They've got
Your mic is cutting out a little bit.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I'll try and talk a little bit louder. Sorry, my bad. So yeah, they just completely execute this perfectly. And Valor Accords, they try and prime with the Lashak there, as you can see, but they're not able to do the damage there because you can see all the control. So many icons there on the Valor Accords team where they're just web tracking disruptors neutered to hell. The Curse obviously has bonus tracking disruptors which it's using there against the Macario. Probably means it can't shoot or track it effectively at all, so straight away they're on the back foot. It's an interesting setup. I think it's a kind of themed setup.
I want to say that the actual initial moves of it are really interesting. It's sort of a cross between like a rush and control team, because some of these ships are going in, but but also some of them are moving out. You're seeing like the Curse and to an extent like the Pontifex and those ships kind of make sure that they don't get tackled down, make sure that they have freedom of movement, whereas the Lashak, the Vanguard, the Sacrilege, they're all getting stuck right in the middle of it, putting out as much control as they can. And I think that's really interesting. It's like they're trading mobility advantages by putting their really slow ships in and making them rush.
Yeah, and halfway through the match you can see them there just go forwards just to execute the other team basically and mop up. They know that they've won once the Macario and Navy Harbinger are down. They know that Valor are not going to have enough DPS to crack their tank, and they're just moving in for the kill here, which is quite interesting. Just a really nice idea. I think people, when they first saw the rules of Alliance Tournament 16, were worried that you weren't going to be able to theme a setup as well, because you had to pick, you could only pick one of any hull. But this is Vidra saying, no, you absolutely can. If you think deeply into the theory crafting enough, and you have big wallets, then you can absolutely come up with these themes. It might be that they're using this and they don't think it's particularly strong, but they think it's something they want other teams to consider. Often big teams bring setups at the beginning of the tournament which they don't think are going to be endgame meta, but they want people to know that they're thinking along these lines to try and throw them off. It might be that they think this is not going to be a winning setup, but it's going to be one that are going to get them through the early rounds very confidently against so-called B teams.
Yeah, something I've really want to highlight here is the use of that Vanguard. It's obviously an Alliance tournament ship, but one of my favorite facts about it is that of all of the ships that Pothny covered when he went through and did his Alliance tournament prize ships guide a couple of years ago, is he gave the Vanguard the lowest possible mark of, possible chance of being shown in an Alliance tournament in the future. And I find it incredibly funny that a single change, the ADC change, completely changed how powerful the Vangle is. Because now it's not just a bad curse. Now it's a curse that has an insane amount of tank.
If you prime it, you have to blast through those four. It has 4% resist bonus per level, so it's already very resist. So it's very powerful with a logistics ship pointed at it. And if its logistics support dies, it's still got that basically invincibility module for a limited amount of time as well, while it can pull range or clear tackle.
Well, specifically, the thing is that you can let it get into about half armor, 25% armor, hit that ADC, and suddenly all the damage stops. You rep it back up, and a control team has taken 10 to 50, or 30 to a minute to try and get it to that point, and all that DPS time has been wasted. Meanwhile, you've got your Leshak ramping up, you've got your Demovac ramping up, you've got your Vadmat ramping up. This whole comp is very much built around momentum, in my opinion. I don't know if you agree with that.
I think it's a very good point. And there's something I want to touch on this comp before we move on, which is the oppression that comes with not just a nuke comp, but a nuke comp centered around, as this one is, medium-sized ships. The Legion, the Vanguard, the Curse, they're the ones bringing, as well as the Vedbach to a degree, they're the ones bringing the majority of the nukes on this. And those are medium-sized nukes, which means they're short-cycling. You can put so much pressure on somebody to keep them at zero capacitor and stop them sort of cap boosting to get their weapons back up, to get everything going. And it comes back to what you're saying, it's momentum. You can stop so much momentum by completely shutting people down with the oppression of medium nukes, which sounds a strange phrase compared to things like the heavy Balgorn nukes we've seen in previous years, but I think it's one of the most powerful things that comp has.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Does
and
anyone
one thing
else
about
have
this
anything to
specific...
add? Oh,
Yeah, one thing with this specific one, like we're already seeing, Fraternity actually did a very similar version to it recently, where basically, obviously Fraternity, being a relatively new alliance, doesn't have Vandals. I have a feeling they're going to be hard to buy in the next couple days as well, but they actually did a very similar version where they basically brought a Balgorn instead of the Vandal, and they did something pretty much, they did the Newt Legion, they did the Curse and all that, so they were relatively successful with it. So I think we're already seeing, already day 2, people are kind of like, hey, maybe we should try this out. So we might see a lot of it this weekend.
All right. Well, with that, let's throw it over to the final comp we're going to be talking about this time, which is an absolutely dreaded comp, the bane of every theory crafter's life, the ECM comp, which your team, unfortunately, Alexei, has decided to inflict upon our poor viewers. Do you want to explain a little bit about how ECM works and how this comp is put together?
Alright then. Well, ECM in general, it's the RNG E-War, which means everybody hates it, because either you're using it and it doesn't work and you hate it and they're angry because you brought ECM anyway, or you're using it and it works and you don't really get that much satisfaction, but your opponents hate you anyway because somehow you landed every single jam for 3 minutes on a 50% chance. But the big thing that ECM comps are bringing this year is we've had reduced points for recon ships, and we've just had a lot of sort of across the board nerfs to things like the drone comps and the BC comps that happened last year. So ECM isn't so much coming out as a powerful thing as it's just sort of bubbled up as other things have been pushed down. And my team, Laserhawks, we brought an ECM comp here with Vindicator Leshak, same kind of top end as a lot of the control comps we're seeing here, but rather than the newts and tracking disruptors, bringing Rook, Falcon, and Blackbird, and then Augur is the final cruiser that's in the back providing logistics. The Rook, Falcon, and Blackbird will ruin anybody's day, basically. And the match we came up against with United Federation of Conifers, they brought kind of an all-in rush, which is really nice against ECM, because one of the big benefits of ECM is you have a snowballing potential against a lot of teams. As they have less ships, you're able to focus your ECM onto fewer and fewer targets, and that makes it more and more powerful because you're more likely to lock down targets. final things that sort of rounds out the Laserhawks comp here is you've got a support wing with Pontifex and Magus, which are just there to bring links because obviously you haven't invested in any battle cruisers at the top end. Malediction to provide tackle, and Vedmark, which at 4 points for the ship that it is, we're going to be seeing in almost any comp that can slot it into armour this year, because that's just a really nice ship for the slot, bringing heavy tackle, some newts, a fair bit of damage if you leave it on target, but generally just being really good for 4 points.
Has excellent tracking against those bombers as well.
Oh yes, it's fantastic tracking. I've seen comparisons that even unspooled, it does similar kind of performance at clearing small ships to Orthrus's and things like that. And we see here, I think it was either Vedmark or it wouldn't have just been the Malediction that went off and killed the Hound there. And really just cutting out the damage of that Federation of Conifers composition. More of the damage gets locked away behind jams, and then you see this is a comp that will just continue to roll over. The Augura, it's T1 logistics, but something I always end up saying, you can sacrifice your logistics in ECM comps to a degree. Not like throw them into the middle of the enemy team, sacrifice them, but not invest as much in getting repairs because you've still got those ECM ships that you can rely on to mitigate damage. And with...
So effectively, in a situation where your logistics ship is under an intense amount of pressure, you've already lost anyway, so there's no reason to invest something in an end scenario that's already, going to involve you losing because nothing's jamming. And if
Exactly.
your ECM comp isn't jamming anything, you're already in big trouble.
Indeed. If by the time that your logistics is tackled in a comp like this, if you've allowed everything through and for that to happen, you have bigger problems than the fact that your logistics probably isn't going to tank. But here, this is going to be a victory to nothing because at this point, there's nothing more Conifers could do. We've got even more control than we started the match with, in effect, because that ECM's being distilled down to smaller targets, and they've not broken anything so far. Nothing's going to break for the rest of the match, and that's what we're going to see this comp doing, is trying to break down some big targets. The Leshak, particularly in this composition, will be able to sit on something and spool. The ECM gives options to stop things like enemy neuting ships or enemy tackle that try and peel the Leshak away from its target, and combined with the Vindicator, those two are just going to get on a target and tear it apart.
I've got a little question for Alexi. I'm sure one of the graphs that we used at the weekend to kind of demonstrate that although ECM was being picked quite a lot out of the possible UR options, it didn't seem to have the best success rate. So what is it about this Laserhawk comp that's doing it right as opposed to other ones?
I think what this comp gets right is by adding something like the Leshak, and you can see it kind of happening here, the attack bar grows. And this, what you bring with the Leshak is threat, huge amount of threat. Between the Vindy and Leshak, you've got at least 3,000 damage. And that's something that a lot of ECM compositions in previous years just haven't been able to do. They haven't been able to have a strong amount of ECM and a lot of threat. Being able to do both, which is what this comp can do, with the cheaper pointed recons this year and the addition of the Leshak, which is incredibly cheap for the threat that it can offer, you are able to take a team apart, even if your jams aren't just handing you the match, like other ECM compositions might be needing them to.
So something I actually wanted to call out specifically here, that because we're not actually going to digest this match specifically, is the amount of individual piloting that's actually going on there with those small ships. You really did point it out, the Pontifex, the Magus, the Vedmak, and the Malediction. Throughout the match, those ships were just hunting down these little frigates and providing their little bit of control and doing good individual work. And I think that's really interesting. It's something that this rule set seems to have brought more to the focus, is the support wars. And they were always something that was very integral to large matches, but now with you can't bring the same level of counter utility that you could before, with those Octodad comps, with the Typhoon fleet issue comps that made support fights very, very dangerous or potentially one-sided. Is that something that you've seen as well, or is that just me?
I think I'm seeing the same thing, but for slightly different reasons. I think a lot of what's happened this year is with the Highlander rule, the one of any given hull rule, a lot of the redundancy that teams have had has disappeared, and every single ship is that bit more important. And that's brought the focus into the support wings, because you've got far more things like that Maulus. Admittedly, it's been left to last because the Maulus as an ECM ship isn't too powerful, since the rule a couple of years ago that prevented you scripting the damps. But you have a single ship in the support wing. Potentially you don't have what you'd have in previous years, which is 2, 3, maybe even 4 ships in the support wing filling the same role, and you'd have to be trying to clear all of them to get that potential from your opponent off the field. In this new meta with the Highlander rule, you can take something out by just taking out one ship, and that not just gives you more opportunities to benefit from the support war, but it gives you more avenues into it, because you will have more things happening in a support wing that you can choose which one you need to pick off.
Alright, wonderful. Well, I think we're going to take it to a short commercial break here whilst we...
We aren't, apparently.
Yeah, so let's keep going.
Okay, we're going to keep going. Brilliant. That's pretty good. I was just looking at the schedule there, but apparently we don't have it ready. So let's just go right into the second part. No time to waste with advertisements. Let's go into the matches that we all loved from this weekend. I know I personally had a lot of them. I almost struggle to like specifically call out some bad ones because it feels like every match I personally commentated was just straight fire. I loved Samurai Sold Out in every single match, but Black Bart Pirate, I believe you have a specific one you wanted to call out.
I do. I won't necessarily say it's like the best match of the weekend, but I think it's my favorite one because it shows the power of stealth bombers. It was the Templess Calcif versus No Vacancies, and I really liked it because we got a combination of, it was kind of like, hey look, Templess Calcif is back, look how good they still are, like they've kind of escalated themselves even more, because we always kind of, last year, you know, they were sort of, it's like, oh, they killed Hydra, and this year it's like, okay, wow, maybe, you know, you guys got your piloting up to that point. Obviously,
if the audience can look at the screen here, we've actually got the Alliance Tournament replay tool working once again, thanks to our good buddy EQ. It's not public, but we are going to be able to use it to take a look at these matches from new and shiny angles. So let's play this off and just kind of talk through, or at least, actually, before we go into this, let's actually talk about the bans here, because I find those super interesting.
Yeah, so Templess Calcif banned out, they banned out ECM, so they banned out Blackbirds and Rooks, which I think they were scared of it, and the reason why is because Templess Calcif is bringing a shield tinker here, and generally, like with an armor tinker, you can actually prevent yourself from getting jammed pretty easily, because you can just slap a ton of remote sensor boosters on your ships, but shield tinkers are a little bit more vulnerable to it. And then No Vacancies, they banned out a Kitsune and an Oneros, which I think that they, I've heard rumors like a lot of the newer teams didn't realize in the first weekend that they only had 60 seconds to pick 3 ships, so that's why we see a lot of half bans. But you know, like I said, the match is starting here, and the thing that this match shows is there's this like insane bomb run which is going off right now, where Templess Calcif drops a full out 4 bomb right on No Vacancies and basically wipes their entire team down to about half HP, and then like they alpha through the Hurricane, Maulus just instantly pops, and then that's it. Like the match is over. About
you can see how huge that
in.
Red attack bar is as well.
Yeah.
Like
It's like that's the highest you'll ever see. It's like for that instant where they just drop, like, I mean, they probably did 400,000 damage or something ridiculous like that in one hit.
I can give you the exact numbers actually.
There you go. Yeah, here we go.
boy.
Damage bar spiked up to about 5,500, and part of that is it levels up over the levels out over the cycle time of the bomb launchers. So in terms of raw damage to ships, that did 60,000 damage to the ships on No Vacancies, and that's raw
after
damage. So if you think about how much EHP these ships have, you see why they are just gone after that.
So that's 60,000 effective damage, not 60,000 raw damage. That's not including resistances. So you take an average of like 50% resists, and most AT fits are going to be higher than that. That's 120% raw, 120k damage.
Yeah, like at least. Yeah. But yeah, Templess Calcif, I mean, they were ready to fight this normally, but they basically, the trick with bombers is they have like 2 rolls. One roll, which is used for, like, you'll see them all the time, where they do about 5 to 600 DPS to maybe a little more, maybe a little less, depends on the fit, all that stuff, which is, it's a ton of damage for a 3-point ship. But the better teams will actually use them as bombers in the AT, and it's very, very difficult to do. I mean, if you think about landing bomb runs in Tranquility, it can be pretty tough depending on what you're going after. In the AT, everybody's flying around constantly. The bombers are being shot at specifically. You can't like warp in perfectly, cloak, drop bombs, and then warp out to a safe. So when you see bomb runs like this, like Templars Calcif, they warped their bombers in at a perfect range, set up to like immediately, basically they made a call within probably about 30 seconds of landing on grid that was like, hey, our range on these battleships is pretty much perfect. Let's just drop a bomb wave right on top of them as soon as the match starts. And to do that, you have to be like a very confident team in yourself. And as you see, I think this is the shortest match.
I'm not sure it quite is.
Well, besides Quebec United Legions.
And JD Jumps.
Yeah, besides those guys, besides the people that disqualified themselves. Yeah, this is my favorite one. It's like this shows the power of bombers. 'Cause sometimes people are like, well, why do you bring bombers? They're so weak. They are not that good. It's like, because every once in a while this happens, and you just win the game, and it's amazing. So, very good ships.
One thing I want to just mention before we move on is the power of bombing runs has been nerfed slightly this year by the Highlander rule. Because not just are you only limited to 4 bombers, not many comps would have.
Technically 5, but...
but you're limited to...
Do you want to explain what you mean by that quickly?
So one of the prize ships last year was a stealth bomber, so there's only 50 in existence, and bringing one to an Alliance tournament match would be quite risky, so let's say, because obviously bombers don't have...
Explain why is that? What's wrong with bombers?
So a stealth bomber is a frigate, and generally they're not tanky frigates. They're very, they're very thinly tanked. They do a high amount of damage. They're fairly quick, but they are not tanky ships. To bring a ship that's probably worth anywhere
like
between
90
100 billion and 150 maybe to an Alliance tournament match for the extra DPS, probably not the smartest move. We might see it later on. I would love to see a 5 bomber bombing run with one of those in it, because they do get a huge damage bonus, don't they? So,
and they have the drug bay.
And they have a drug bay. Yeah. So I was interrupting Alexi there with what his point was, but I was just like I find it quite amusing that you could get 5 bombers.
No, what I was going to say was, because you have the 4 unique bombers, you don't have the full damage bonuses that you might unlock by having similar bombers, because to make a bombing run happen, you have to use all the same kind of bomb, otherwise the bombs will destroy each other. You have to use unbonus bombs on 3 out of your 4 bombers, compared to previous years you'd only have to do it on 2 out of your 4, or 4 out of your 6 if you're some sort of madman.
I just like the match. It's fun. It shows some things. It'll be the example whenever anyone's like, well, why would you bring bombers? It's like, there you go.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Templars Calcif in general, though? Are you expecting them to go much further in the tournament? I know we saw them take a loss to PL later on.
I mean, they barely lost to PL. Like, they lost to PL because I think that they didn't quite bring as good of a team comp, but I think they were about 2 minutes from beating PL. Like, if they had held out just a bit longer, I think PL did a better job controlling the Templars Leshak than Templars did controlling PL's. It's basically the difference between those two, like having watched it again. I think Templars is a very good team. I think that they're going to do well. I hope they don't lose out of the losers bracket on Saturday, because that'd make me seem kind of dumb, but
I'd say they're definitely a top 8 contender.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Their theory crafting can sometimes be just a touch off the point, but in terms of piloting skill, they are absolutely fantastic. They have made me feel I've occasionally substituted with them, and I've felt very embarrassed because I know I'm flying with better pilots, and that's coming from flying on Laserhawk's AT team.
I think their team captain, the last Spartan, his drafting skill is really good. Like, he's really good at picking ships and doing bans, something they saw a lot in the championship they were really good at. And as we go through the tournament, that becomes more and more important, I think. So maybe we'll see them rebound out of the losers bracket. I don't know.
Especially if they manage to make it to the conquest rounds. That's where some of these more strategic, newer teams can really get their advantage. For those at home who aren't aware of what the conquest rules are, I believe it's on the 3rd weekend when we start to get into these best of 3 situations,
4,
where it's going to be, teams really fighting for their tournament life, fighting to get those top 8, top 4 spots. If you win a match using a ship, you can not pick that ship again. So things are going to get very sketchy, and certain comps are just going to get locked out to you if you do well in that first match. It gives the other team a real chance to catch up and surprise you. and also encourages you to bring out some more risky all-in setups potentially for that first match, using ships that you wouldn't normally see.
This rule, in fact, only applies for the fourth weekend, so exclusively the Saturday with the losers bracket finals and then the grand finals will be when we're seeing the conquest rules.
So I look forward to seeing those very, very much. Anyway, moving on, let's take a look. In fact, speaking of top 8 contenders, at Samurai Sold Out versus Brave Collective. This is one of my favourite matches as well, but I'm going to let Alexi take it away. Awesome.
This match I absolutely love because there's a lot of fun stats that go with this, and I'm that much of a nerd. No, it's an absolute ball-to-the-wall composition from Samurai Sold Out with a pair of Tech 1 logistics frigates providing the entirety of the survivability of their comp, and then they brought all 4 bombers. Okay, 4 of the 5 bombers, and then 4 battleships, 3 of them Navy faction and 1 of them their flagship Barguest at their top end.
I have to respect the balls of bringing a flagship Barguest with 2 fucking logistics frigates, and 1 of them not even Tech 2. Oh no, both of them are Tech 1.
Yes. The other thing I love about this is the entirety of the E-War that Samurai Sold Out brought in that composition was a pair of target painters. There are no webs, no scrams, no ECM, nothing aside from 2 target painters. They're
not even bonus ones either. So.
No, not even bonus ones. It's not like they brought a golem for this.
And they wreck so hard on those battleships.
Yeah. They brought about 4,500 DPS and basically applied it all instantaneously. They brought the highest DPS of any team that won so far in the tournament, and only I think it's the 4th highest DPS of any team that was brought at all.
Oh my god, watch that Armageddon just melt. Like, the Aneros reps barely even land. They're not making an impact. Like, do we actually know how much that Aneros repped during that whole match? Because I bet it was nothing.
I'm pretty close to it. It's one of those, I haven't even mentioned the Brave composition in this match at all, and that's because there wasn't really one. It's,
that's actually an interesting comp. It's like a ghetto version of the Amarian core, but bad.
But without being Amarian or, at this point, having a core. The bombers do eventually go down. Those 2 Tech 1 logistics freaks do an incredible job holding them up this far, but they eventually get traded out. But by that point, I mean, Samurai Sold Out, you see, they've nearly got 60 points worth of ships dead already. They've won at this precise point because they've just traded so effectively. The fact they don't have meaningful logistics, meaningful tackle doesn't matter because they've got rapid heavy missiles that will hit far enough away that Brave can't outrange them. And with 2 painters, they've got all the application they need, apparently, to finish out this match.
Was this match after or before the Vidra Valor Accords match? Because I just remembered now, the Vidra banned out Navy Scorpion and Barguest. So did they see this match and go, we cannot let that happen to us? We don't want our Velashak to melt before we can newt it out. Was it afterwards? Yeah. So maybe they actually took their bans from watching Samurai Sold Out do this and just go, we can't let that happen to us, which I find quite interesting, how like these kind of like wacky off the wall comps can actually shift an AT team's thinking, or maybe they knew it was vulnerable to big missile comps anyway.
If you've looked at the Vidra and Hydra bans, they are targeting missiles, so I think they're going after things that don't care about capacitor,
right? Probably
because they know that like this. There's another match somewhere in here where somebody brings a similar, like a 4 rapid heavy launcher. I think it's Exodus, and they just like alpha the logistics, and they kill like 2 or 3 more things in the first like 35 seconds of the match. So, there's still room for like 4 battleships with rapid heavy launchers to just clean up. And as long as you kill enough things before that first reload, you're probably going to win. So I saw that here and saw it with the Exodus versus CVA match.
Yeah, something I want to ask you specifically, VP, however, is could Brave Collective have won this match, or was it pretty much decided from the draft? Because to me, it looks like if Brave Collective had started to kill those bombers first off, rather than getting focused in on that Barguest, they might have been able to do something a little better. But maybe keep that Armageddon alive and work from there.
Yeah, the Balgorn was dead. Like, they had no chance with the Balgorn. I think they could have kept the Armageddon alive because as soon as the Armageddon goes down, they basically are able to clean the Astartes barely, and then they hit then they hit reload. And I think if they had kept either the Armageddon or the Astartes down and had gone straight for bombers instead, they might have had a chance. But I don't really think they had it. I do think that Brave kind of fell for like the flagship bait of like, they have 2 Logi frigates, let's kill their flagship, haha, they won't be able to do it. And then they're like, oh, our Balgorn's dead.
We have no DPS.
And our
left.
Armageddon's dead, and now our Astartes dead, so I guess we're just gonna lose. But like you see, like with this little left, I think they actually kill all 4 bombers, and I think they kill both logistics frigates. I might be wrong about the logistics frigates with like... Yeah, so they kill both logistics frigates with a Confessor and a Mauler. So if they had gone just straight down the line of bombers and then logistics frigates, they might have actually pulled this off. But they fell for the like, oh guys, let's shoot what is probably the tankiest ship. Well, I guess there's a Navy Scorpion, but theoretically could be the tankiest ship on the field, which is the Bargus, because if it's an officer-fed mutoplasmided Bargus, those things tank like crazy. So I think Brave did horrible target calling here.
The Abyssal shield rep probably a key part in keeping that Bargus alive.
Yeah.
The fact that those 2 frigates went down, and actually the fact that bombers in general went down, I think shows kind of their role in the composition for Samurai. They are completely disposable, in honesty, and that's shown from the fact there are 2 paints on that comp.
Yep.
There's nothing that will screen. There's not even the battleships able to use grapples to hold down a target and get sort of some protection for smaller ships behind them. They know that sort of their mid-game for the composition, probably if they don't have as glorious a start as they had in this match, looks like what we have there. Just the 4 battleships against anything that they have to be.
All right. Well, with that, let's wrap up with the final match we're going to talk about, which is RJ's, highlight of the weekend, and it's definitely one of the most dramatic of the event. The most dramatic match. It's Goonswarm Federation versus Lumpy, and this one was a complete there was so many layers to it. You had the Matani on grid, you had the double reverse mind screen bait, the Navy Augurer being polarized. And for those in the audience, actually, Bay, why don't you just take it away?
You've just given away all the highlights already.
Oh
it's
my
fine.
god, there's so much. I could gush
It was a
about
fun match. Like straight off the bat, like we were looking, preparing for the match, and just about to cut to it, and Alexi runs the room and goes, I think the Matani is actually going to take part in this one. I was like, what? The Matani? Is it spelled THE space Matani? Because we were like, oh wow, I didn't realize he actually took part.
Sure that they weren't
Yeah, we didn't want to feed it to the host and be like, someone's alt who they'd spelled similar to the Matani. So we double checked his portrait and everything. But so yeah, it was great to see. It's great to see Eve personalities taking part in the tournament. It's fantastic. So that's like the first highlight. You've got one of I think you've got the Goonswarm's 23rd best FC there, and also the Matani as well. Probably all pumped up on protein bars and ready to go. And they go into this match and they make a brilliant play. I mean, the setup itself. So you got Paladin, Armageddon, Absolution, Brutix, Navy Augurer, Blackbird, Vexer, Vedmak, Thalia, Deacons. You got basically a pretty all-round armor comp.
It's going up here
with the red
against
frigates
kind
there.
of a gimped version of the Octodad comp.
Yeah, so it's gimped. So it's DPS versus DPS. You know straight off the bat there's going to be explosions. It's fantastic. But the one thing that Goonswarm do, which is quite interesting here, to gain a little bit of advantage, their Absolution and their Navy Augurer, flown by these 2 big Eve personalities, they basically use a little bit of psychology against Lumpy here. These ships are polarized ships, and if you don't know what a polarized weapon is, it basically, if you fit a polarized weapon, you get a huge damage increase. I think it's 20-30%?
30 or so.
30, yeah, so you get huge damage increase on your weapons. However, your resist is reduced to 0. So if anyone shoots you, you can't tank with reps, you can't tank at all. You're just like a paper thin. So they worked on the assumption that Lumpy wouldn't shoot these guys because they were kind of FCs and popular, so most likely to be tanked. Goonswarm used that to advantage and just put massive damage on those 2 ships, which really helped them tip the damage in their favour. And as you can see here, they just tear through these Lumpy battle cruisers, which is fantastic. So Goonswarm Federation brings something fun and something, losing a little bit of psychology there, bringing some personality to the tournament. It's fantastic to see. And Alexi told me the stat about the Paladin. I believe that was the ship that's done the most amount of damage in the tournament so far. That Paladin. Just sat in the middle of there in the arena, you can see He's got a range bonus there with his pulse lasers. He can hit everything. He can track all his battle cruisers perfectly well, and he just blasts through them all. So possibly that ship as well had either polarized or a lot of damage mods on it. So.
We know from looking at things after the match that it wasn't polarized, unfortunately.
It wasn't polarized.
I was kind of hoping it was, as that if they still had Bastion, I actually would have been disappointed that it wasn't, because if they'd had Bastion, it still could have done pretty much everything that's done here, and tanked still, being polarized. But it got to sit there for the entire match, and it dealt 134,000 damage across the course of this match.
Is that raw?
Yeah, that's the raw numbers, which is an astonishing amount of damage. The pilot, after the second round, is still holding title as the most damaging pilot in the entirety of the AT, but only managed to add about 20k damage in the second round.
Around about this point in the match, I actually called it for Lumpy, I think, because of the speed at which the Goon Swarm ships were just disappearing here. I think I called it for Lumpy. I just kind of had a hunch that that's the way it was going to go, but if you actually look here, Goon Swarms has its 2 logistics frigates, which come into play as this match rolls on from this point, because Lumpy doesn't have anything left in terms of logistics or support.
I find it funny that you called it for Lumpy at that precise point, because that was exactly the point I started calling it for Goon Swarm.
He doesn't know better than
I fly it, but part of that was down to the Paladin giving an inevitability to Goon Swarm. Because you've got Thalia and Deacon, yes, they are logistics, but they're not going to be that much. So you're kind of looking at trading out ships between the teams at this point. And every time just one of the standard ships on each side trades out, that Paladin gets stronger. Because if it's a local rep fit, you're looking at something that you've got to break its buffer, but you've got to break its buffer with whatever DPS you have minus its local rep. And though you look at other ships and say, yeah, I've got 1200 DPS to burn through the buffer on it, you look at the Paladin and you've probably got 200 DPS that you'll actually burn through its buffer with. And then you lose a ship and you realise, I've not got the DPS to ever break that Paladin. And that's the inevitability that I was looking at Goon Swarm having at this point, where, I mean, it does go to 10 minutes in the end. They don't fully clear the field, but that Paladin just sat there and kept on dealing damage. And
really went to show what a Marauder can do. And it's interesting because we haven't seen Marauders very often. Do you have any quick comments as to why that is?
I think a lot of... Yeah, points, they got brought down on points after Bastion got taken away from them. I think a lot of people... There is a lot of psychology to how the meta turns out in the Alliance tournament, because you'll see metas evolving entirely because somebody finds a new tactic, and not necessarily because of rule changes. And in recent years, after that sort of massive nerf to what Marauders could do by taking out Bastion, people haven't really liked them. I think what we're going to see get rid of them for the rest of this year, aside from perhaps there are some flag Marauders still lurking, is they are very, very weak to ECM. They have a lower sense of strength than even the Tech 1 battleships to compensate for the fact that they have the
Ironically,
Bastion
that was
module.
originally supposed to be their major downside, but obviously with the introduction of the Bastion modules way back when, that's effectively been removed on Tranquility. But it's still apparently necessary in the tournament to keep it balanced, which I find interesting.
Well, even on Tranquility, it's there because it forces them into Bastion a lot of the time. Forces them to use their electronic warfare resistance from that module, and it locks them onto the field. But
yeah, a very interesting fact of game design. However, we're going to have to move on into our final section here because we are running low on time. These matches have been so interesting that we haven't even been able to show any adverts, and I don't care. What we're going to do right now, however, is we're going to introduce some of the matches that are coming up and kind of get into the swing of the storylines that are brewing. And my personal favourite storyline from this is the two paired Battle of Allies. Because we have both Goon Swarm Federation going up against Test Alliance, Please Ignore, the two major alliances in the Imperial Legacy Coalition, which is currently fighting and engaged in the north right now in a super capital fight against two other alliances, Pandemic Legion and Northern Coalition. and both of those guys are going to be fighting each other, their best friends, their brothers in arms, in the next round of the tournament. What do you guys make of that? Do you think there's going to be some kind of, playing nice and not revealing anything too important, or do you think this is going for blood and showing who's the dominant partner?
This is all about respect, and there's no way, even though they're friends on Tranquility and allies, there's no way that their line members are going to want to be held higher than the others. So they're going to be bringing out the big guns. They're going to be bringing out everything they can. It's kind of a local derby of sorts. I think Goons Tappy is going to be fantastic. I think what's interesting is both these pairings are probably on a similar level.
Yeah.
Like both the teams in terms of like their theory crafting and piloting.
The best part is they're all they're evenish. Like I would definitely put like this current Goonswarm team is probably about on level with Tappy's. NC Dot versus PL. I'm not 100% sure, but it feels really even. And the cool thing for like me, NC Dot side, this is going to be the first time we fought each other since 2 years ago, and that was the first major like NC Dot feeds shitloads of ISK match where we kind of got our rep, where I lost a Cambion and we lost our flag barkist and PL boundary twice. So it was like the ultimate, like PL did their thing, we did our thing. It was like perfect. So I'm pumped for Sunday, and I think I might actually get to commentate it with Elise. I'm not 100%. We're trying to push for it. We're like let Elise and me commentate.
I think that'll be fantastic.
Yeah.
I have just one question for this: are Goons going to be bringing Matani off the bench, given he currently has a 100% win rate for them?
They better. Yeah.
I hope we get to see Pro God Legend, Billy, the Matani, all the big names.
Yeah, just bring the boys.
I hope they make it a real show for us all.
That'd be great.
Yep. And then we got Samurai Sold Out versus Volta. We got Skill U versus Initiative, which should be pretty good because I know that Initiative has this like really huge following after last year. We got a lot of relatively even lower bracket matches, which is going to be awesome because Saturday is the official like if you lose you are gone. So every single one of those matches, even if some of them are kind of like, well, maybe this isn't a big name team, it still means a lot to both them and to viewers. So that's going to be cool. We're going to see Hydra and Vidra again against, like, I would say slightly better teams, not necessarily, like, ones you think they're going to potentially lose to, but there's ones that they have a chance. I mean, they lost to, they've lost a lot of stuff, so we might get to see some cool stuff from them, and everyone's seen the new comp, so yeah, this is going to be, like, the weekend, I think. Hoping.
I think every weekend from now
every weekend's the
exciting,
weekend, yeah.
But this is
the first, like, crazy weekend, yeah.
All right. Well, it looks like this is going to be time for us. So thank you all for tuning in. It's been wonderful having you. I'd like to give a huge shout out to the people who helped make this happen, which is the Alt venue. It's where our casters are streaming from. It's where we're doing the whole event from. They are a video gaming hub. You can go there. You can play PUBG. You can get cider delivered right to your keyboard. It's amazing. And you're also, we're helping to shout out to one of their parties, which is going to be at 7 p.m. too late. It's a video gaming party. You can come in, win prizes, etc., etc.
Cool.
You can see all the details there. If you're interested, Google them and be in the area.
Are we done? Are we out?
I thought you were saying goodbye.
I thought we were saying goodbye too. I think we're still streaming. We're totally still streaming. Yeah, what are we doing? Let's keep going, guys.
Rather than the ad read. But thank you all very much once again for coming to us.
Yeah, let's go log our Titans in now.
We'll all go back to losing Titans on our mains in the system where everyone's fighting that I don't know the name of.
X47, and the good guys are winning. That's what matters.
Yep. Controversial statement. We'll see how that stands up in next downtime. When
I was going to say, they got like 12 more hours to go, so...
Yeah, I'm
Saddle up, boys.
If you are interested in seeing more of that, please feel free to tune into the many other streams of that Lagfest that are going on. But if you're interested in seeing what EVA's like on the micro scale, please take a look at the Alliance Tournament VODs, because they are wonderful. It's a sayonara here from both Streamfleet and EVNT. We'll see you again next week for another Alliance Tournament After Action report. Take care and fly smart.
Do Daniel.